heard Pence screaming into the radio, 1199, Standard Station J's, 1199.
Attention all Santa Clarita units to a 417 possible 245 vehicle. Southbound Interstate 5 at Passaic Junction.
You could go through your entire career and maybe never hear that call come out.
Put your hands on the roof.
Danger of the job is that regardless of training equipment, that there is always that element that is the unknown, where an officer may at any time sacrifice their life, and the fact that training or equipment can be helpful, but it's not always the save-all.
And that particular night, we had more units than we normally would have on. And I've seen a lot of times where we had half that many units, and that we had a full crew that night. I was talking with Roger Gore in the locker room. We were getting ready, changing in our uniforms before we were going to briefing that night, and he was telling me about, he's going to take his little boy camping for the first time. He's old enough to take him out, and he's looking forward to it. On his next days off, they're going to go camping together, and they're all excited about it. And then pretty soon we go into briefing. You hear the briefing items, you a couple of cups of coffee, and you jump in your car and you all go out to your beat, and you don't think the last thing in your mind, nobody's going to come home that night or the next morning.
At the time, the fact that a law enforcement agency had lost 4 officers in one day, in and of itself is a tragedy. But from that, and in any situation where there is a loss of life, whether it's civilian or law enforcement, typically we try to glean from that lessons learned. And there were lessons learned, and as we always do, we always try to improve our tactics, we always try to improve our equipment, and that goes with any profession.
It just put us on our toes. I think it affected all police all over. I mean, instantaneously, it was that fast. It was an impact. I was grateful to be alive.
It was a little before midnight that we got a call of a brandishing of a weapon.
Attention all Santa Clarita units to a 417 possible 245 vehicle. A brown Chevy 2-door California plate. Adam Boy Henry 167. Adam Boy Henry 167.
I guess you could say back in 1970, it was somewhat of a routine call. A lot of people up in this area were target practicing, stuff like that. So maybe that call wasn't taken that serious, I don't know. It's hard to think about that. When the call came out, we were like downtown Newhall. And I was probably southbound San Fernando Road in the vicinity of Way Station, if you know where that is. Gordon Frago had spotted the vehicle that was wanted for this brandishing call. I flipped a U-turn and started headed that way, northbound on San Fernando Road. But then I heard the second unit with Pence and Allen. They were at Valencia Boulevard, overpass. So they were communicating car to car, and they were talking about making a traffic stop once the suspect passed Valencia Boulevard. So as soon as they said that, I figured 4 officers brandishing a weapon. I backed out of it. I quit my response, basically. So the last transmission I heard Gordon Frago make was they're turning north on the old road. And the other unit said, we're taking the Henry Mail off-ramp. So they're just right across the freeway, the second unit. Seconds, within a minute from being there with them. And that was the last transmission I heard from Gordon Frago.
Morning, Adam. Back in. These guys are great. Let's take them. All right, mister. Put your hands on the roof.
Then the very next transmission was seconds later. I hear Pence, who, by the way, rode with me during his break-in period out of the academy for a little while. I heard Pence screaming into the radio, 1199, Standard Station J's, 1199. which that's our radio code for officer needs assistance. You could go through your entire career and maybe never hear that call come out, or you would hear it very, very seldom, that's for sure. So the minute I heard him screaming in the radio, we knew there was a problem. So I was driving an old 69 Dodge back then, which is like what's parked out here in front, and I just put the pedal on the metal, floorboarded it. And just the same time, I see Holmes and Robinson, they made a U-turn right in front of me. So here we are, bumper to bumper, flying down towards the scene. As we turned at Saugus Cafe and headed down what's now Magic Mountain Parkway, I glanced at my speedometer, and it went from 0 to 130, and I had the needle pointed straight down in the black. So, needless to say, we were trying to get there as fast as we could.
When we came around the corner, and it was a white knuckle ride the way he was driving, I had one hand clenched on the shotgun and the other on the spotlight, and we came around the corner. There was still a cloud of gun smoke in the air, and when we stopped the car, I jumped out with a shotgun, went under the fence in front of Jay's. I approached I think it was a white Camaro, and heard a female screaming. And as I got closer, she said 2 highway patrolmen just got killed. And she was pointing in a northeasterly direction. So I kind of worked my way up that direction as well, and there were 2 men behind a Cadillac. Same thing. They said 2 of your officers just got killed, and they were in that red Pontiac right there. And about that time, we had other support units responding. Officer Bill Duncan from the Scales came over and assisted me in a search throughout the riverbeds and the wash.
We didn't know it until I think it was the next day. We found a bullet hole in the side of Robinson and Holmes's car. And like I say, we were just bumper to bumper around the corner. So they fired at us when we come around the corner, but we didn't know that until the next day. So I stopped back a little bit, probably 100, 150 feet from the scene. And then Holmes went further into the scene. He was there, that driver. And both of them bailed out. Robinson, the passenger, with shotgun. Holmes got off 2 rounds as the suspects were fleeing. In fact, I heard that the owner of that gas station is here today. Did she make it? There she is.
Was the gas station open at the time?
Yes, it was, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When the other gentleman was saying the gas station was closed, we were having a hard time trying to get a graveyard person, and we had just gotten the graveyard person.
So it was actually open. What, at that time, what
Yes.
then did your graveyard person relate to you?
He called us the first time, I'll say around 11 o'clock, and he says there's some shooting up in the hills. What should I do? And Jim says, well, as long as it's up in the hills, don't worry about it. You know, just work the station. So then he called us back around half an hour later and says, hey, they're still shooting. And Jim says, well, if you're really worried about it, you know, stay inside, turn off all the lights, etc. Then he calls us back 15 minutes later and says they want me to go downtown and make a statement as to what's going on. Jim said, where did this shooting happen? And the guy says, between Jay's and here. Jim says, I'll be right there, shut the station down. Don't worry about it, just don't worry about it, just shut it down. So then we went out there.
So I stopped back a little bit further. Holmes went up, got off a couple rounds, and then we bailed out of our cars as soon as we arrived. Roger bailed out and went to the right with our shotgun, and I bailed out and ran behind my car. Didn't have a clue who we're looking for. And back then we had 3 years on the job. You know, we thought we knew everything there was to know. There was people in the parking lot, and you got to picture this. This parking lot was full of people, even though it was right before midnight, and they were pointing. We didn't know who we were looking for, what we were looking for, how many we were looking for, but they were pointing like that's the way they fled. So we worked our way through the parking lot, and I remember a truck driver bounced out of his truck, and I almost shot him because I didn't know what I was looking for. And then we spotted their car. What they did, they abandoned their car just, 300 feet away, right at the freeway, and then they fled on foot. But we didn't know that. So we thought they still might be in their car, so we basically surrounded their car, and a couple of guys made the approach and discovered they were long gone. So Roger and I came back to the area where the cars were, And I pulled out a piece of yellow crayon that I used for accident investigation and marked all 4 bodies and wrote their name on it. And then later I testified in the trial to radio traffic and position of the bodies, and that was about it. And we still had no idea where these guys were, so we were crouched down behind cars, not knowing if they might take a shot at us. And we had ambulances on scene, and they loaded all 4 bodies and took them away. I remember that the only officer still breathing when I saw him was Alan, but I didn't even know it was him. And these are 4 friends of ours. He'd been hit in the face with a shotgun, and his face was just terrible looking. I didn't even know it was him until I looked at his name tag. The other 3 were dead at the scene. And so we loaded them and took them away.
And back then we didn't have vests. We had 6 shooters, didn't have semi-automatics, didn't have two-way radios, that type of thing. So it made a lot of changes in the positive for officer safety throughout the whole country.
And back then, this may not mean anything to most of you, but we used to have seals on the shotgun. You guys that are working today, if you can believe this. It was a yellow paper seal that went on the slide and over the barrel, and every time you made some sort of a high-risk felony stop where you had to chamber around, you would break that seal. And then
write a memo.
You had to write a memorandum as to why you did it and circumstances, and you know how employees hate to do that. So, but that changed. After that, we raised a big stink about that, and they got rid of the seals, so that didn't happen anymore. You know, people have asked me why, you know, what was the officer safety, felony stop training, what was it like back then? And I have racked my brain, and I really can't remember. I'm sure we were well trained, or at least we thought we were. But I've attended so many training classes over the years that I really can't remember what the training was back then. Were there mistakes made? You know, I don't want to say anything negative against these 4 guys that lost their lives, but had the officers remained back at the first 2 officers, had they remained back at their car behind their open doors, that would have afforded them some protection, not total, but some, and waited less than a minute for the second unit to get there, then you would have 4 officers, weapons out, trained on the suspects, and then ordered them out one at a time through the, I think we had a public address system back then, did we? And would things have been different? I think so. Could there still have been a gunfight? Probably, yeah. Because these guys were like caged animals. They didn't want to go to jail. And they knew, and the reason they put up this fight is because they were both ex-cons on parole, and I understand they met in prison. That's how this all came about. And they knew if we found the guns and their car was loaded with guns, they were going to go back to prison, and they wanted no part of that. So it was kill the officers and get out of there alive, yeah. This was 39 years ago, and I'm sure people have it in mind, oh, that couldn't happen today. No way could that happen today. Well, here we go. 4 guys in Oakland, 3 guys in Pittsburgh die. You know, there's a lot of bad guys out there, and just hopefully, you know, those of you that are still working won't encounter these kind of guys.
Throughout history, many tragedies have been accompanied by great courage and heroism, and the Newhall Incident was no exception. So it is our tremendous honor to welcome Mr. Gary Dean Kness.
Put yourself in Gary's place that night. He's on his way to work, and I don't want to take his story, I'll let him tell it. He's on his way to work, and he stops short of this shooting, and he thinks it's a movie being made. He couldn't believe what was going on. So he sits there for a minute, then he realizes it's not a movie when he sees, I believe, Allen go down. And I'm sure he didn't see the first two officers because they were probably, his view was obstructed. But then he sees the last officer go down, unarmed. He throws the door open, runs into the scene of an active shooting, and then, that's just unbelievable to me. This guy is just a true friend of law enforcement. I know a lot of you may do something like that. I mean, we got a lot of friends out there, I realize that. But what he did that night was just phenomenal, in my opinion. So
thanks, Harry. I'm not a hero. Those guys wearing that uniform, they're the heroes. They do this stuff every day in and day out. I couldn't. I was lucky. But, you know, Harry and the rest of the highway patrol, I'll do anything for them. Those four did not deserve what happened that night.
why don't you start where you first saw him, Gary, when you were going to work?
Yeah, I was on my way to work, and I stopped at the stop sign at the on and off ramp. And I saw highway patrol car come down, and he turned right in front of me. They had their flashing lights on, and quite honestly, I couldn't figure out, well, why they had their lights on like that, because there weren't any cars around, you know, and they turned onto the old road, and I'm right behind them. And it was when I made the turn, I could see black and whites, two black and whites down in front of me in the driveway leading into the gas station. Now, this was probably between 10 and 5 of midnight. And normally, the gas station was closed and the lights turned off at that time. But tonight, they were on. And I stopped because at first I thought, movie. I thought Chips was making a film, I don't know. But I could see 2 officers and gun flashes. And it didn't take just a few seconds, I knew it was real. And the officer closest to me had a shotgun. He was at the rear of the car, and I saw him fall forward onto the trunk and then sliding off the trunk out into the street. And I could see another individual by the gun flashes still firing at him. And that's when my feet said move, and I did. I ran down the road trying to grab him by his Sam Brown belt, but I knew it was, I couldn't move him. It was dead weight to me. And there are still shots going off, and I see this shotgun, and I can see an individual coming down the right side of the patrol car, and I jump up over the bumper with the shotgun, and it goes click, and I have a terrible feeling, and I pump it, and it goes click again, and then I really got a sick feeling. I threw it down, and I saw a service revolver. I grabbed it, came back up over to the trunk of the car, got it in a 2-hand combat, elbows on the trunk, and cranked one off. I knew I had him because he spun around, and I cocked it, and then it went click. And I said, it's time to leave. And at that moment, it sounded like a 105 howitzer, but it was only a 45. But I looked over my right shoulder, and I could see the other officer. And there was somebody come around the car, walked up to him. I got you now, you dumb SOB, and he cranked another one into him. I went for the ditch. And as I'm going into the ditch, I can see flashing lights. Highway patrol cars, sheriffs, I don't know who all they are. And I'm, okay, God, the good guys are here. The first car coming down, I realized I'm looking down the barrel of a shotgun. He had his door just cracked open, and he had the shotgun laying out the window of the door. And it dawned on me at this point, I'm covered in blood, and I've got a .357 Magnum in my hand. And I'm making sure it's down at my back of my thigh so they don't think I'm one of these cuckoo clocks out there. And I'm saying, they went that way. And they pulled in, and I just sat down in the ditch and waited. And that was about it.
Davis is serving time right now up in Pelican Bay, is my understanding, which is what, up by Crescent City, up by the Oregon border. And he doesn't give interviews. He hates us. He hates the highway patrol. But he did do one interview some years ago, and the reporter asked him, and they said, well, what do you think about killing, how do you feel about killing 4 young officers? They all had families, they were young, wives. And Davis's response was, I didn't see young men, I saw uniforms. So this guy had a real thing about uniforms, you know, maybe something happened in his youth, I don't know, but he hated the police. And I think he took joy out of that shooting that night.
Why do you think you have to go that way? I've been in before, and I will go back again. I think it's better for me to do it myself, let them do it for me. Of course, if you're held in California, you know, there hasn't been an execution in California for a long time. Nobody killed 4 highway patrolmen for a long time either. Yeah, but if you had a good attorney, you know, they could put the thing off for several years, and there's a pretty good chance you could come out of it with your life. Well, I don't expect it.
All these officers had young families, they all had children. It's great that we keep this alive, that these officers didn't die in vain. What Gary did that night was phenomenal. I mean, I'm in awe of that guy. When I tell the story, believe it or not, chills run up my spine thinking about it, what he did. Unarmed, goes into an active gun battle. Unarmed. I'm in awe of that. That guy is just one amazing individual.
Yeah, do you chalk any of this up to the Marines that you were doing this?
Some of the training, you know, it comes back to you. Always, well, the favorite is check your 6. See what's going on around you.
Now, I think that probably the reaction of about, let's say 100% of the people minus 1 would have been not to get involved. What possessed you to get involved?
Somebody needed help. When I saw the officer fall out into the street, I could see he was still taking fire, so he needed help.